Hey, it's Will Shannon here, and I want to talk to you today about naturally saving someone's appendix. The main symptom of something going wrong with an appendix is what we call appendicitis. Now, the first thing you need to know is when you hear the word itis anywhere to do with the body, it means inflammation. So appendicitis, which is the most common thing that can go wrong with someone's appendix, has to do with the fact that someone's appendix is inflamed. So the first thing we need to ask is, why would someone's appendix be inflamed? Well, we're not born generally with an inflamed appendix. Generally, most of our problems are either genetic driven or lifestyle driven. So what does the appendix do? Well, your colon is basically the sewage system of the body. You have the ascending, the transverse, and the descending. Now, your colon, the muck that comes into your colon gets fed into the ascending colon from the small intestine. Now, what happens is when the small intestine feeds into the ascending colon, there's a little drop where basically muck has to travel up against gravity, up the ascending colon to go across the transverse and ultimately out the descending and out to the toilet. This is where a lot of fecal matter can get built up. One, because gravity is pushing it down, and two, because a lot of bacteria and pathological organisms can live here. Now, Western scientific medicine has always felt they didn't know what the appendix does for a long time. In fact, the word appendix comes from the word appendage, which means they didn't have a clue. They thought it was evolutionarily unnecessary. So a lot of surgeons would actually just take out the appendix and the tonsils to stop anything going wrong. And even though Western scientific medicine thought the appendix did nothing, they would still remove it because it would get inflamed in a lot of people. So there's still speculation in the Western scientific community as to what the appendix does. There's 2 or 3 main theories and people are still uncertain. But the main way that people think about it is that the appendix is an antibacterial. It sits there and it secretes antibacterial substances into the colon, or it allows bacteria to escape downwards into the appendix to protect the colon. It's basically part of your immune system, and it secretes white blood cells, your tonsils, your adenoids, your appendix. They're all part of your immune system. Your immune system secretes white blood cells. Now, what this means is your white blood cells basically eats or consumes bacteria, yeast, mold, worms, pathological organisms that live inside us. So if it wasn't for our white blood cells, we'd be dead very, very quickly because the bacteria will consume us. In fact, this is one of the reasons why we just decompose into dust when we die. So why is the appendix inflamed? Well, probably 2 reasons. The primary reason is the colon is filthy. When this happens, there's so much bacteria, pathological organisms that the appendix can't take it anymore. Now, when this happens, obviously there's a really serious possibility that the appendix could burst. So as soon as someone suspects they have appendicitis, generally the smartest thing to do would be to rush them to the hospital in order to save their life. Now, people who have appendicitis tend to get down near the navel to the right side. This is where the appendix sits. It's called McBurney's point. Sometimes people may be getting pain and they think it's appendicitis, but it could be the ascending colon being compacted with muck, or it could even be up under the rib cage and be a liver that's actually fatty and swollen and pushing against the fascia, which is a fancy word for tissue, underneath the rib cage. In order to save someone's appendix, the first thing we're doing, firstly I want to give you a disclaimer, and that's treat this as a second opinion. Treat this as how I would treat myself. The smart thing to do would be rush to a hospital immediately, be in the hands of a medical doctor who can give you their opinion. But the way I would treat myself if I had appendicitis or an inflamed appendix would be, the first thing we always do is we clear out the colon immediately. We get all the muck out of the colon straight away. Now, the way we do that is through a series of enemas. Now, if you don't have an enema kit at home, get on the Biomedic website, that's Biomedic with a K, purchase one right now, because you need one as an emergency measure. It is the number one thing you should have in your first aid kit. It doesn't just serve for appendicitis, it serves for a range of things. But the first thing we do is we immediately empty the contents of the colon. We give it a series of enemas, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, until we get all that bacteria and muck out of the colon into the toilet. And I might even do another audio at some point as to actually how to give yourself an enema. I know that's a little bit of an awkward topic from people, but could be very saving, particularly in this context. Now, once we administer, we'd put in sodium bicarbonate, we'd put in chlorophyll, and we might even put in some clay. But we'd put in something to help remove the muck and get it. Sometimes people use coffee. I wouldn't necessarily make coffee my first choice for myself if I was cleaning out the appendix. Now, after we've emptied the contents of the colon, we begin to things. Now, people are sick. They're often diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, sweating. So the first thing we'd do is begin to administer further laxatives. We'd be using Epsom magnesium sulfate. Magnesium chloride, which is a form of salt, is my preference, but it's not easy to get. These can be obtained from a pharmacy. I'll be putting sodium bicarbonate in water. And thirdly, and I'm going to recap in a second, so remember this, I'd be giving people clove buds, powdered, rosemary, and thyme. You can get these in the spice aisle in the supermarket. I would be putting them in water and I'd be drinking them as much as can be tolerated. But if you want a rough guide, I'd put about 1/8 of a teaspoon of clove buds in a glass of water or more and be drinking 3 to 4 glasses. Half a teaspoon of rosemary and thyme and drinking that. And I'd be flushing with water. A teaspoon of bicarb per litre, or if bicarb makes people nauseous, don't use it. But we're going to be flushing over a series of 3 or 4 days until we're out of the danger zone. So we'd be administering enemas on a daily basis. We'd administer an enema until the pain subsides. We'd be flushing orally, and then for 3 or 4 days we'd get them to appendicitis. You stop all food, and we get you to not eat for 3 or 4 days, and we get you on a juice fast until you're out of the danger zone. Now, once this has passed, we'd then be looking at changing your lifestyle, which would be eating less animal products, more vegetables, more salads, sometimes more fruit and more juices, and particularly more liquids. Now, if you're listening to this audio and you've had your appendix removed, then in some people, your appendix and your tonsils, you get lucky, it actually grows back. And if that happens, then I wish you the best of luck. I sincerely hope it does for you. Don't say, buddy, I don't want to pay for another operation. But if you change your lifestyle, then an intelligent person would look into the future and say, this does not need to happen again. So the first thing we do is we take care of our colon. We remember that an inflamed appendix is a symptom. No body organ gets inflamed by itself, as does the tonsils get inflamed, because they're part of the immune system to protect us through our throat. So the first thing we do is we treat it as a symptom that something's wrong. So we change our lifestyle. We have less animal products, which are loaded with millions of pathological loads, and we focus on our fruits, our juices, our vegetable things, and so on. We keep an enema kit handy. If we ever have symptoms of appendicitis again, we immediately go back on the program, and we treat it as a gift to change our lifestyle. And the other thing that I'll stress strongly is, if you've had your appendix out at some point and you don't have an appendix, then you've lost your creator's system to alert you that you're destroying your body. In fact, it's like having your appendix is like a fire alarm going off, and all you've done is turned off the fire alarm, which means you should immediately realize that you have no alarm to know that when there's a fire, and you need to take double or tenfold the precaution to help prevent it. So I hope you find this audio helps you, and I hope that if you need anything or I can assist you in any way, you'll reach out and contact me, and I'll definitely render you assistance. Now, I have to tell you as well, if you do suspect appendicitis and you do report to the Western scientific community, the first thing they're going to do is scare you. They're not going to scare you because they don't care. They're going to scare you because they just don't know any better. They really don't know. A surgeon does not have reference experiences. The only thing he's been taught is to remove things. He doesn't even understand how the body works in terms of the appendix, because Western scientific medicine is still not certain. That for a long time they believed it was an appendage or something extra. They have no references of herbs or natural healing working because they've never bothered to try it with anyone. And the first thing they're going to do is, out of great concern and compassion for you, is scare you and want to save your life or someone you care about and say you better remove it, which means it's going to take all your emotional resources. They don't have the reference experiences that perhaps you do, or perhaps that I do, of saving dozens and dozens and dozens of problems similar to this. So the first thing you need to do is get into a strong emotional state and make a decision. And remember, if you are in a hospital, or you're under observation, or you're going to go, either do this first or do this under the care of the hospital. But certainly remember that when you're in the hospital bed, you can request an enema. You can get people to bring in water and start flushing with magnesium sulfate. So if you suspect appendicitis, you can rush your loved ones to the hospital, be under the care of the hospital, but you can certainly take things into your own hands, because doctors are not herbalists. they're not natural healers, and they don't necessarily have the same conviction that perhaps you and I do, that the body can save itself, because the body repairs things. Surgery does not repair anything, and drugs do not repair anything. The only thing that repairs things is the body removing itself. Now, also, if you have had an operation, I encourage you to get one of the herbal creams on the website, or a herbal cream with white willow bark or comfrey in there, to begin to rub in every day, because anytime you have surgery, you leave a weakness. Now, there's very little nerve receptors in your bowels, which means you won't feel that something is wrong there. Your lungs have some nerve receptors, your skin has a lot of nerve receptors, but your colon can be impacted with fecal matter and you don't feel it. Your stomach has a lot of nerve receptors. Have you noticed that when you get indigestion, or you get excruciating stomach ulcers or acid, you're in excruciating pain, but once it's moved through your stomach, you don't notice it anymore? Now, it's doing excruciating damage to the 17 feet of your small intestine, and your large intestine is probably impacted with fecal matter. You're dirty, you're tired all the time because of it, but you don't feel it. In fact, I've heard stories of soldiers on the battlefield getting shot and just picking their intestines up and putting it back inside them. This is the condition of your colon. And if you're going to care for yourself in one area, the first thing you need to do is care for your bowels and care for your lungs. Now, we'll talk about your lungs in another tape, but bowel care starts with proper nutrition, and it starts with periodic cleansing and detoxing. You should be detoxing at least once a season, if not living in a state primarily of detoxifying. If you're not opening your bowels 3 times a day, you have a challenge. In fact, all primitive cultures open their bowels about 30 minutes after every major meal. 30 minutes after every major meal. If you're not going 3 times a day, you've got backlog and you've got pathological organs that are living inside you, seeping through the walls of your colon into your bloodstream. So now your white blood cells are working overtime, and you'll be sick, you'll be tired, and and let me tell you, constipated people are angry and frustrated. I have not met a pleasant person who is severely constipated. So I encourage you as a friend, go out and fix this, and I hope you found my words inspiring. If you need anything, certainly contact me, and I'd be happy to work with you further in person. I appreciate you listening.